All right, on to topic number two, the first 5 episodes of Loki, season two. And I guess, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the first 5 episodes of Loki, maybe, pause this episode, dedicate 5 hours to watching it, and then you can press play again. But I've been watching Loki, week to week to week from the first episode when it came out. I know you recently just caught up on it. I'm interested to hear, your thoughts. So not someone who's been waiting every week, the slow burn of waiting for a new episode. What are your thoughts as someone who just watched all of it back to back to back?
Yeah, I think the show is pretty good. It goes back to I think the same things I've talked about with the first season. The show looks amazing, like just the visual effects, the everything about like how the show is like visually represented. I think is really good. The acting is amazing. It's just a really cool show. Obviously, Loki is a an awesome character. Although this season, my favorite character has definitely been Mobius. He's been awesome.
Hmm.
I think this is some of the best acting I've seen from Owen Wilson. But yeah, his acting is has been really cool. He's been my favorite character of the show so far. But yeah, it's been an interesting kind of creative show. There's some stuff about it that I don't understand, and I'm kind of wrapping my head around. And it's something we talked about on the off the podcast in the past. I didn't jump on this show right away simply because Ahsoka was so good. I really enjoyed that show. I didn't feel like you know especially after Secret Invasion, that there was going to be a Marvel show that kind of lived up to that level. And I don't think this has, but it's still remarkably good and a million times better than Secret Invasion ever was. So yeah, I got to give them props for making a pretty awesome show. But you're the one who told me to watch this show. I actually wasn't gonna watch it until like it was all out. You mentioned, hey, you should probably check it out. I remember you did a short, which I watched right after I watched the fifth episode. Um, I think you did that about the after the fourth episode, and
Yeah.
it's really interesting, right? Of like you mentioned some things about even when you were just talking now. It's very it's very hard to predict where each episode is gonna go and like who's the villain, what's the main conflict, like what's gonna happen. And I think at the end of episode four, once again spoilers, where the thing that they've been trying to prevent that entire time actually happens, I think kind of surprised a lot of people because it was like, well, what is episode five gonna be? Um, and yeah, so I'm kind of curious to get your impression of the show overall and episode five, considering you were kind of wondering after episode four in your short what's going to happen. A lot of people are saying we have no idea what the next stage of this show is going to be or where it's going to end. How did you feel about it overall?
So say how I felt about the show. I watched it, like I said, the first week it came out, which Ahsoka finished on the Tuesday and Loki came out on the Thursday. So it was definitely, I kind of wish I waited a bit
Mm,
because I was definitely riding the high of Ahsoka, and then Loki came and I was like, this doesn't seem that great. But I mean, it was hard to follow up the finale of Ahsoka. I would say that each episode, in my mind, Loki has gotten better and better and better and more exciting.
hmm
And I guess as is the case, the stakes keep on getting higher each episode. The whole season, spoiler alert, they're it seems like they're trying to stop the loom from failing, right? And the loom from failing and all pretty much all of existence being wiped out. Not just like, okay, Thanos snap, pretty cute. I'm trying to wipe out half of existence. No, they're trying to stop everything, all timelines from being destroyed. And at the end of episode four, it happens, right? You get the spaghettification of Victor Timely, and then the loom detonates. And when that happens, it's kind of like if if all the timelines are wiped out, where is this possibly going to take place? What's possibly going to happen?
hmm
And I mean, there were still 2 more episodes, so we knew that something had to happen. But it was hard to predict where everything was going to take place and what was going to be the story from here on out. But okay, we get Loki, and it's hard kind of exactly say where he is, when the episode starts, because he's in the, I guess, what do you call it, time theater. he is by himself. All of his friends are gone, and he's time slipping again.
Mhm.
At the start of the season, he was time slipping out of control, and just hopping past, future, present, and when he's in the TVA, right, he sees, I mean, that whole timeline begins to spaghettify, and it begins to disappear. And then he time slips to, I think he time slips all over the place, right? And throughout the episode, he is time slipping to variants of his friends that were there, when the loom exploded, and he keeps on time slipping to them, but these are variants. They don't remember who he is. They well, not remember. They don't know who he is
Yeah.
because they haven't met him. He's met another variant of him. And so he's hopping around, and then he finally lands on a variant of Ouroboros or OB. And or he happens to be some sort of physicist. And he gives him the TVA handbook. And through using that, and I think he was in like the 1992. So, definitely far beyond what science was in 1992. But through that handbook, he's able to create a very rudimentary time pad. He finds Loki again, who time slips somewhere else. They get the band back together, as Loki said, or as Ouroboros said. We need to get the band back together so we could jump to this moment in time before the loom exploded. And throughout that, they're trying to figure out, why does Loki keep on time slipping? They're thinking, okay, maybe your motive needs to be strong enough. You need to figure out why you keep on time slipping, because OB suggests that, hey, you can control this, and doesn't seem like he's able to. And then at the very end, Loki sees all of his friends disappear. All right. And this was also like, it was a more emotional episode of Loki than I think there's been, right? Even in the first season compared to this one, he has a moment with Sylvie when she keeps on asking him, like, why do you want to save the TVA? He's like, oh, I'm trying to save all the timelines. It's like, no, why do you really want to save the TVA? And Loki kind of gets to the point that, I want to save the TVA so I can have my friends back. Because if I don't have my friends, I don't know where I belong, right? And it's kind of, a little tear jerking moment.
Mm.
And you realize that throughout Loki, and this is like Loki back to the MCU, right? He's always been sort of like a misfit. He's always been an outcast. He's always been, he's the adopted stepchild, you know. So it seemed like he didn't really feel like he belonged. And then even at the end of, his time in the MCU, right when him and Thor, we've saved Asgard, or we've saved some of Asgard. We are brothers and we're working together. We're not trying to kill each other. I'm not trying to trick you. And then he gets killed by Thanos,
Mhm.
right? And so now he's found his belonging. He's found his place. He's not Loki, Thor's little brother who always loses and always gets put in jail and gets killed. He's Loki, like the protector of the TVA, and he has his friends that he works with, and then they get taken away from him. He's like, I want to save this so I have somewhere to belong again. And he ends up losing that in the episode. And in losing it, he is able to time slip. And then he realizes that it's not, where I'm trying to get to, or it's not, you know, what's, what's my motive for doing this. It's who I'm trying to get to. And then it's like, oh, he's trying to, it matters that he cares about his friend so much that that's why he can time slip. His reason for saving everything is he wants to save his friends, and he could time slip to his friends because he cares about them so much and he cares about saving them so much.
Mhm.
So definitely like a emotional note to the episode where it's usually not that. But yeah, I guess what are your thoughts on what's going on in the fifth episode? And I mean, it kind of seems like the plot for episode 6 is just keep on jumping around in time and save the day,
I
pretty
mean,
much. Like it's an hour. I'm guessing it might be over an hour, maybe like 70 minutes, but not a lot of time.
I mean, I'd be down for it. It's so because I put so much time in between Ahsoka and the first episode. I actually just watched the first episode yesterday. I watched it all yesterday. So, but because I put so much time in between those, first episode was one of my favorite episodes. I really
Oh.
enjoyed that episode. And the fifth episode was also one of my favorite episodes. And the reason why is I really like time slipping. I think it's really fun to have like a time paradox moment. There was a point in, it might have been episode 4, where, you know, we see in episode 1, we see Loki get pruned and we don't really know who does it. But, and then, we see, oh no, he actually pruned himself, but in a time loop kind of a situation. We saw in episode 5 where it starts off with him saying hello to himself in this kind of time loop. And I love time paradoxes and stuff like that. And the time slipping really allows for that. It's really cool. So yeah, anytime that he's jumping from place to place, I'm really enjoying it. The effect is kind of creepy, but still like it nonetheless. And yeah, episode 5 was fun to see them kind of get the band back together. Uh, it's interesting because Loki. One thing I really like about it is that it feels very disconnected from the MCU. At least to me, it doesn't feel like this is just the MCU. There's a few references here and there to stuff that's happening outside of this. Like he even talks about how when he tried to enchant Iron Man and it didn't work and stuff like that. But overall, this is really self-contained. There was a point when the time slipping was happening where I was like, "Oh man, what if he becomes like the Nick Fury of the next multiversal war, where he goes to
Mm.
different multiverses and brings in like an Avengers of the multiverse war to stop the Kangs?" But then, when it turns out no, he just wants to get the people that his friends back together. I wasn't disappointed because it was kind of the situation of like, no, this is Loki. It's its own thing. It doesn't have to be connected to everything. It doesn't have to have Iron Man and Captain America and stuff like that. And I would love for the MCU to do more of that. I think that would be really cool. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how this all ends and where it ends, because one thing you mentioned Timely, who is supposed to be the Kang variant. That once again another time paradox kind of thing of he gets the book as a kid that Ouroboros wrote, and then he then designs those machines that Ouroboros based that book off of, which I thought was kind of cool. And that's supposed to be how you make another He Who Remains. That didn't work out, but the interesting thing is we don't really have a villain. And I'm kind of curious to see if this ends with some kind of clarification on Kang. Because so far, all we've seen is a bunch of Kangs lose.
Mm.
And it's interesting to see if, he is going to end up being the big bad going forward, or if maybe this is the end of that, which I wouldn't imagine so, because there's supposed to be a bunch of them. And I will say, like, there are a few things with the show that kind of confuse me. Like I never really understood why Ravonna Renslayer and the others were like at odds with each other, considering they seemed to both want to stop what was happening with the Loom. So like, I think the lack of a villain has made things a little bit confusing. So I'm kind of curious to see if this ends with the TVA being resurrected, or if this ends with maybe some clear information on Kang. Either way, though, I'm not going to speculate or kind of guess on what's going to happen. I'm just enjoying the ride because so far I do have a lot of things about it that I really like. And if the next episode is going to continue with time slipping around the place, I'm cool with that because that's one of my favorite parts of the show.
Nice. Any final statements for today?
No, well, I just wanted to get your impression of like, what do you think episode 6 is going to be like? Are you excited for episode 6? And do you think that this show lives up to the what you left off with Ahsoka? Because we talked about on this podcast in the past, next year there's going to be a little bit more restriction on Disney Plus in terms of password sharing and stuff like that. They raised the price, and we talked about these two shows even before they launched seemed like the perfect opportunity to prove to people that Disney Plus was worth it. Um, do you think so far with Ahsoka and this show, are they on similar levels, and did they accomplish that with you of saying no, Disney Plus is definitely worth it?
I wouldn't say they're on similar levels, but I'm also gonna say that yes, I am more biased towards Star Wars.
Mhm.
So Ahsoka and Andor are definitely they're at like the top of the list for me. Loki is very like a I would say Ahsoka 1, Andor 2A, Loki 2B because like you said, I love that this is its own thing.
Mhm.
It's not yes, they make little references to, "Oh, yeah, remember that time I tried to, like, take over New York? Yeah, that was a fun time, wasn't it?" Like, they make little references to the MCU, but it's its own story, and I really like that, and I'm a science fiction fan, so I love all the fact that it has to do with time travel, like, as the basis of this series, right? It's the TVA. They are managing time and they're hopping around in time and talking about alternates and variants and all that. So I really like this. But and my biggest criticism, and it's not really a criticism, is like there's only 6 episodes.
Yeah.
There's only, as you know, there's only so much you can do in 6 episodes. There's only so much of a story you can tell. And it's not really a criticism. I want more of it. Right? And I think because Ahsoka was longer, we had more time with the characters and we were able to build more excitement for it. Now, once again, I'm a Star Wars fan. So, yes, I'm more excited for Star Wars. But, I think if we got a couple more episodes, I don't think anyone would be complaining about that.
Yeah.
And I think it would give more time for people to get excited about it, more time for people to be talking about it, more time for it to be like culturally the thing in terms of, pop media. So, yeah, I definitely think that shows like this make Disney Plus worth it. Definitely. Um, but when it's only 6 episodes, then it's like, all right, it's a little bit less worth it. If it was 8 episodes, then you could say, okay, at least it's 2 months of the year that I know, okay, I'm gonna have Disney Plus so I can watch Loki, right? And especially if they're starting to even cut back on shows that they're producing because they understand, hey, we've been pumping out too many shows too quickly. They haven't been the most quality. When you have a quality product, put out more of it. And if you're not gonna, I'm not saying to rush in between seasons,
Mhm.
but at least when you do have a season, make it a little bit longer than 6 episodes, right? Because now, okay, this is gonna end next week. And then what? We're not gonna have another Loki season for 2 years,
Yeah.
probably. And then, okay, are we waiting 2 years for another 6 months again? Because that doesn't seem like a great payoff. But yeah, I think Ahsoka, Loki, Andor definitely make Disney Plus worth it, along with other things. But yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Although I will say I also agree with you in terms of the show length. I think what Netflix did, and once again, maybe I'm too much of a fan of the Netflix series, but I like the 13 episode runs, and I would be fine with less shows, more episodes. Um,
Hmm.
because those always felt like an event of like when the next season of Daredevil was going to drop. It always felt like really exciting. We were going to get 13 episodes. We knew it was going to be a really like well thought out, well paced story, which doesn't always happen with 6 episodes or 5 episodes. Um, so yeah, I do agree with you. I think more episodes would be an awesome way for them to pivot and maybe even make cheaper shows. I would have to say Loki looks like a very expensive show, so I don't want to say like, oh, don't make another Loki because obviously Loki looks amazing. There's tons of really high profile actors in it. Um, but yeah, maybe just find a way to make cheaper shows going forward other than Loki, especially if you're trying something for the first time and you don't know if it's going to work. Maybe make it cheaper, and then if that's really successful in season 2, you can up the budget and make something that looks as awesome as Loki. But yeah, I do agree with you.
Yeah. And if you are looking at Mac products, once again, make sure you check the refurbished section. Get some pretty good deals there.
Yeah.
But other than that, take it easy, everyone in podcast land.
Catch you in the next episode.